Alright, so my name is Marissa, and today I'm going to be talking about narcissism, social rejection, and aggression. The title of my project is Too Much Self-Love May Lead to Evil. So first, I would like everyone to ask themselves this question: am I a narcissist? 5 signs that you might be a narcissist include if you have an unhealthy obsession with yourself, if you lack empathy for others, if you have a sense of entitlement, if you have arrogant attitudes and behaviors, or if you seek attention and admiration regularly. So my suggestion would be, if you have any of these signs, or especially if you have more than one of these signs, you should probably get that checked out. At the end of this presentation, I'm going to answer the question, does narcissism lessen the restraints for evil? So the required reading for this is called, Isn't It Fun to Get the Respect That We're Going to Deserve? Narcissism, Social Rejection, and Aggression. A few key terms that I would like to define include narcissism, aggression, social rejection, social exclusion, and evil. Narcissism is the excessive interest in oneself. So this basically just means like someone who doesn't really care about like the opinions or feelings of other people, and they're just like all about themselves. Aggression is hostility toward another individual. Social rejection and social exclusion are basically like the same thing. So as far as social rejection, it's when an individual is excluded from a social interaction, and social exclusion is when an individual feels isolated from society. And evil, as we have defined probably about 100 times this semester, is any action that is harmful, intentional, and excessive. So in the first study, the researchers examined the relationship between narcissism and reactions to social rejection. Participants included 56 undergrads, it was 30 men and 26 women. And in the beginning, participants completed 3 different questionnaires, which this was how the researchers found out the levels of narcissism, levels of people's self-esteem, and their feelings of inadequacy. Then the participants were asked to tell a story about a time they felt rejected. They were supposed to describe the circumstances of it, how they felt about it, and what they did about it. Then they completed a mood measure on how they felt during the time they were rejected. So not when they were telling the story to the researchers, but how they felt during the time that the rejection actually happened. The mood measure included feelings of anger, such as like irritated or hostile, and also it included internalized feelings, such as like sad or embarrassed. And the scale ranged from 1, not at all, to 7, very much. Researchers found that narcissists responded to rejection with greater anger, but less internalized negative emotion than non-narcissists do. So this basically means that narcissists felt irritated and hostile more than they did sad or embarrassed. Anger was positively correlated with narcissism, so this just means the greater narcissism, the greater the anger was. And also, anger was negatively correlated with more internalized negative emotions. In the next study, researchers manipulated social rejection by having peers in the laboratory. So rather than the participants telling a story where they felt socially rejected, they were actually socially rejected in person. The participants were 55 undergrads, 33 men and 22 women. They completed a demographic form and also the narcissistic inventory from study 1. Participants were placed in a room together in order to get acquainted with one another, so they had to learn each other's names, and they had to ask a set of questions that were given by the researchers. Next, participants were separated and asked to name 2 people they would most like to work with. So researchers assigned participants to either be accepted or rejected. 20 participants were told they were rejected, and 35 participants were told they were accepted. Then they were to complete the mood measure from study 1. Similar to study 1, Narcissists responded to rejection with more anger and fewer internalized negative emotions compared to non-narcissists. So as the table shows, narcissism was positively correlated with anger for those who were rejected, which just means the higher levels of narcissism, the greater levels of anger. And narcissists did not report more anger after being accepted. In study 3, the researchers examined if narcissists were likely to lash out with aggression toward those who rejected them. So participants were 31 undergrads, 16 men, and 15 women. They completed the 3 questionnaires that were done in study 1, and they also experienced social rejection from peers they were acquainted with, similar in study 2. Next, the participants were separated and asked to name 2 people they would most like to work with. Instead of some people being told they were accepted and some people being told they were rejected, all the participants were told that they were rejected during this study. Next, the participants completed the mood measure, and then in addition to the mood measure, they had to complete a computer game where they believed they were competing with another person that they met in the peer group. However, they were not really playing against anybody because the game was rigged from the beginning. They were told that the loser of the game would receive a blast of white noise, and participants were able to set the intensity and duration of the noise in advance to playing the computer game. Researchers found that narcissists were more aggressive toward those who rejected them, and they were more likely than non-narcissists to blast their rejectors with longer and louder noises. So Table 3 shows that narcissism was positively correlated with aggression, and self-esteem was not a significant predictor of aggression. So it didn't really matter how much self-esteem a person had. That had nothing to do with regression. That had nothing to do with their aggression. In study 4, researchers explored displaced aggression. So there were 61 undergrads, 31 men, and 30 women. Similar to study 3, participants met with peers and then were separated and asked to name 2 people they would most like to work with. This time, participants were randomly assigned to one of 2 conditions. They were either told that no one chose them or that everyone chose them. Then they completed the mood measure, and they participated in the computer game from study 3. They also chose the noise intensity and duration for the loser of the game before they engaged in the computer game. Participants were told they were playing the game with someone who was not a part of the peer group but another undergrad. This is where the whole displaced aggression comes in, because like in study 3, they were told they were playing with people who they met in the peer group, but in this study they were told that they were not playing with someone they met in the peer group. So it was just like a random person they were playing against. In this study, researchers found that narcissism is linked to aggression toward an innocent third party following social rejection. They also found that narcissists were not more aggressive after being accepted. So they showed more aggression if they were rejected, but if they were accepted, they still showed some bit of aggression, but they did not show like any more aggression than if they weren't accepted. So what does all of this mean? Overall, narcissists demonstrated more aggression in all 4 studies than non-narcissists. Narcissists who were socially rejected showed even more aggression. Narcissists who were socially accepted did not show more aggression. The main finding of this study would be that the highest levels of aggression require both narcissism and an experience of social rejection. A few limitations to this study are that not everyone has the same idea of what aggression is. And another limitation would be that the researchers should have incorporated people who were not associated with the university. So instead of having people who went to the same school as them, they should have brought in outsiders, maybe children or any other type of person who was not associated with the school. to see if the aggression was still the same. So in the beginning of this PowerPoint, I said that at the end I was going to answer the question, does narcissism lessen the restraints for evil? So in my opinion, narcissism does lessen the restraints for evil because as revealed in the studies, narcissists use greater intensity and duration against those who rejected them. Although the blasts of noise were not real, narcissists believed they were, and they intentionally wanted to cause excessive harm on another individual, which is what evil is. A narcissistic person will go against any person who threatens their power, which explains why the narcissists in the studies showed more aggression toward those who rejected them. As an outside example, just think of school shooters. So most school shooters have exhibited traits of narcissism. School shooters are also normally individuals who experience some sort of social rejection by their peers. Oftentimes, school shooters are those who have been bullied. These school shooters even attack those who do not directly reject them, but because they are associated with the same environment, they become victims too. And in my opinion, a narcissistic person will do anything, even if it is evil, to maintain a feeling of superiority. So, in conclusion, yes, narcissism does lessen the restraints for evil. Here's my reference, which is the article. And then as far as the syllabus timeline, I would say that this topic goes under intergroup processes because those who are narcissistic have certain ways they think about, feel about, or act toward another person due to the traits that come along with narcissism. Narcissists have a certain bias toward anyone who threatened them. So, like, in my opinion, same as like race, gender, age, blah, 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 you could probably like just you could like group all narcissists together because they're very similar. They all have like the same views and the same beliefs. So basically they could just be like their own group of people, which is why I believe that this article would fit under intergroup processes. And that is my project.